Hello, it's John Bouman again. This is for Unit 4 of our online textbook, www.inflateyourmind.com. We're going to talk about total average and marginal production and eventually also the law of diminishing marginal returns. A production function is a relationship between inputs or resources and total output or production, number of products that we produced. So let's take a look at a simple example here. Let's say that we have a number of workers, and we can let the number of workers vary from 0 in this row, and then we can say, well, we can hire 1 worker, or 2, or 3. Now, we're working in the short run, so we're going to assume that the amount of land that we have, let's say we're producing laptop computers in a factory. And let's say that we have 1 factory, and within a short period of time, we can only have the 1 factory, and we cannot expand it. So let's say that we have a certain amount of land, let's say 2 acres. So on those 2 acres, we have a small factory, and we're going to keep that constant. So we're going to keep that building constant. And then we have machines to make the laptop computers, machines, equipment, and so forth. And let's say that we have 5 of those. So we're going to keep those constant as well. Maybe after a longer period of time, after a year or 2 years, we have enough money, we can buy more large pieces of machinery. But for now, we're going to keep that constant. So the only thing that's varying is the number of workers from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3. So total production in the last column, we are going to say that we have no production at 0 workers, so we're shutting down, there's no labor there. And let's say when we have 1 worker, we can make 9 laptop computers, let's say per month. And when we hire a second worker, so at 2 workers, we perhaps could make a total of, well, let's see, you would expect it to be doubled, but since we have 2 workers, maybe each worker can specialize a little bit, so perhaps a little bit more than double. So we're going to say 20 here. And at 3 workers, perhaps they can specialize even more, so that we would have proportionately even more production. So 3 times 9 would be 27, and actually the average production at 2 is 10, so 3 times 10 is 30. So let's say we have a little bit more there. I'm going to say 33 products total production. So now let's take a look at the calculation of average production and marginal production. First of all, let's add 1 more worker. We'll say we have 4 workers. Still keep the same amount of land, 5 machines, and now let's say the production goes to 40. And average production, let's calculate that one. Well, when we have, so it's average production of labor, when we have no workers, we really can't calculate average production because we'd be dividing by 0, so that's undefined. We also don't have marginal production because marginal production is the additional production. Of course, there's no production before this level, so there's no marginal production at this level. So let's take a look at when we have 1 worker in the next row. When we have 1 worker, our total production is 9, and so the average production, the production per worker, is 9 divided by 1, or 9. And the additional production, or marginal production, so marginal production is the additional production per worker, is also 9. Let's take a look at 2 workers. At 2 workers in the next row, we have a total production of 20. So 2 workers, total production of 20. So the average per worker is 20 divided by 2. 20 divided by 2, or 10. Now let's take a look at marginal production. Marginal production is the difference between this level here and this level. So the difference between 9 and 20. 20 minus 9, of course, is 11. So we have a marginal production of 11. Let's do the same for the next level when we have 3 workers. At 3 workers, we have 33 laptops that we're producing. So 33 divided by 3 workers is 11. So here we have an average production of 11. So each worker on average produces 11 laptop computers. Marginal production, we take the difference between these two, difference between 33 and 20, and that is of course 13. So marginal production here is 13. Let's do the same for the next one. Number of workers is 4. Total production 40. So 40 divided by 4 is equal to 10. So our average production actually drops from 11 to 10. Marginal production, difference between 40 and 33, is equal to 7. What we've noticed is that the marginal production here increases. So from 1 worker to 3 worker, it increases. But after that level, it actually goes down. It goes from 13 to 7. And that level, when we go from 3 to 4 workers, when marginal production goes down from 13 to 7, that is called the law of diminishing marginal production, or the law of diminishing marginal returns. If we had added another worker, 5 and then 6 and so forth, we would actually find that the marginal production would go down even more. It might go from 13 to 7 to 4 to 1. It could even go into the -1 or -2. And the reason for the diminishing additional or marginal production is that as we have fixed resources, in our case land and machines, and if we keep adding workers, the additional worker contributes less and less, relatively speaking. The same is true when you study. So you can compare it to your study habits. Let's say when you study the first half hour, you learn quite a bit, you're fresh, you're awake, and so you're productive. And if you study another half an hour, you're still productive, you learn more, but probably not as much as is in the first half hour. The third half hour, assuming you're not taking a break, so let's say you keep working, at the third half hour you learn a little bit, but less than the first half hour and the second half hour. And eventually, if you keep working and you go into your 10th half hour, you might even lose production or lose knowledge because you're so tired. So that is the law of diminishing marginal production. In the table that we've discussed so far, the number of workers increases by 1. It goes from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 and so forth. And the marginal production, as a result, just increases by the change in the total production. Now in this table, the numbers are going to be a little different. I'm going to change the number of workers from, well, we'll start at 0, just the same. But now let's say we go from 0 to 2 workers. And then in the next row we have 4 and 6. So the number of workers doesn't change by 1, it changes by 2. Now this is going to have an impact on how marginal production is calculated. As you can see at the top here, the definition of marginal production is it's the additional production per worker. So officially it's the change in total production divided by the change in the number of workers. So let's say that we have some numbers here for total production. So total production is abbreviated here by TP. And when there are no workers, we're going to say that the total production is 0. And let's say that the total production at 2 workers is, let's say it's 10. And then at 4, it's going to be more than twice at 10. So at first we have increasing marginal production. So let's say 24, and then let's say we have at 6 workers, we have 36, and at 8 workers total production is going to be, let's say it is 40, and at 10 workers we're going to have a total production of, let's say, 42. Okay, average production, let's calculate that. It's actually just calculated the same way as before. At first, we don't have an average production because Average production is total production divided by the number of workers, L, labor. So since L is 0, you can't divide by 0, or if you do, it's undefined. Average production, the next column is total production 10 divided by 2, so that's 5. Next one, 24 divided by 4, so that's 6. 36 divided by 6 for average production is 6. 40 divided by 8 is 5. And then 42 divided by 10 is 4.2. All right, that's all the same. It's just total production divided by the number of workers. Now, marginal production is going to be a little different. Marginal production, at first, of course, we can't do because there's no previous level, and we're looking at the additional production. Now, it's the additional production per worker. So the total production from here to here increases from 0 to 10. So you would think marginal production is 10. However, it's per worker. So you got to divide by the increase in the number of workers. So it's really 10 divided by 2, which equals 5. So the number where the number of workers is 2, the marginal production equals 5. Let's do another one. Where the number of workers equals 4, we have an increase from the previous level, from 10 to 24, so there's an increase of 14. But we are increasing by 2 workers, so it's 14 divided by 2, which equals 7. So the marginal production there is 7. The next one, the increase is from 24 to 36, that's 12. So we're increasing by 2 workers, so 12 divided by 2 equals 6. Then from 36 to 40, the increase is 4 divided by 2 workers. 4 divided by 2 is equal to 2. And then from 40 to 42, we have an increase in total production of 2. 42 minus 40, an increase in number of workers. So 2 divided by 2, and we have it equal to 1. Just as a side note, first we have, let's see, the marginal production increases here, but then it starts to decrease here at 6 workers. So the law of the diminishing marginal production starts with the 6th worker, because that's when the marginal production starts to go down. It was 7 here, and now it's 6 here. So we have diminishing marginal production starting at the 6th worker.